Here we are, back live,
Saving the world.
saving the world, such as it is.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about right before we got on the air. We were just talking about the thing that a lot of people are talking about today, the Conor McGregor fight.
Yeah. It was. I don't know. For me, it was exactly what I thought was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I said unless McGregor connects real early in the fight, it was going to be Mayweather's fight.
Right.
You know, Mayweather was actually really out of sorts before the fight. He's normally the really cocky one.
Yeah.
And you know, I think he took a cue from McGregor's cockiness and held back on that. Stayed pretty quiet about it. And, I mean, look, nobody really loses a fight like that.
No, absolutely not. No.
you know,
I think Conor McGregor's probably wiping his
Yeah.
tears of
yeah.
defeat away with $100 bills.
Yeah.
No, I didn't get to see the fight. I really, it was probably, as far as like boxing or MMA is concerned, it was probably the only thing I'm really would be interested in, just because of the novelty of it, you know.
Right.
It's not something I really follow that much. MMA holds more of a fascination for me than boxing does. I think that's probably just because I feel like they get more done.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a lot of hugging.
You know,
Some of the boxing that I've watched, but maybe it's just bad matches that I've seen.
I've been a boxing fan for a long time.
Yeah.
I enjoy a good fight no matter where, but
Right.
I'm more of a boxing fan.
Mm.
And just the history of it, and it's a little more. I don't know. It's two different. I mean, it would be like bringing a professional soccer game or soccer player in to play LeBron James 1-on-1 because we saw him make a few 3-pointers once.
Right.
You know, it's a totally different sport.
It's
is not.
And you could, and the very, very small, limited amount of footage that I saw, it seemed to me like it's one thing to train, right? It's one thing to train and get in the ring with someone with headgear on and know in that mindset what you're doing. But I think that when you enter into different conditions, meaning that excitement and adrenaline that was pumping, and that pumps when he gets in the octagon, right, in an MMA fight, that state of mind, right? Like, have you ever heard of the concept of state-dependent learning?
Explain it.
Okay. So, from my limited understanding of it, quick and dirty version of this, if, for instance, you're studying physics, right? You're studying your physics books for a college exam, right? And you take a bunch of Adderall. You're learning something in that state, right? So you're in this heightened state, or even, take any kind of mind-altering substance, be it, marijuana or Tylenol or whatever. Probably not Tylenol, but you get what I'm saying. That in order to kind of access those memories more easily, you have to replicate the state. Right, exactly. So when you learn in the octagon and you're in that state of heightened adrenaline and basically battle ready, all those old instincts that you've built over years and years and years are going to kick in. Sure. I could see him struggling hard, stop himself from hammer fisting Mayweather in the back of the head. I could feel like he wanted to do it, and these were just little snippets that I saw.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that he's a great athlete and he's a great fighter in his own sport, right? I mean, that's kind of a duh statement, but training for a year.
Yeah, it's not. There's no way it's going to match up.
Switch over, and what was interesting to me is a lot of people mad about this fight, and I get that. They're calling foul and whatever else. Look, McGregor got beat in a boxing ring by the best boxer probably breathing right now.
Right.
It really isn't that hard to figure out.
And he went 10 rounds with him.
Right. And what's interesting though is Floyd Mayweather. This guy's 40 years old.
Yeah.
and he really, really
He's a
looks great
badass.
out there, man.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, he, even if you say Mayweather's maybe a little past his prime, he sure didn't show it last night. You know,
Yeah, that's awesome.
so
From what I understood, it was a great show,
yeah, it
and
was
that's
very,
really what matters, right? Like those two guys came out of the ring and were like, you know, civil with each other and complimenting each other, and
my theory the whole time has been these two
they're not stupid.
text
They're
each other every
businessmen.
night, like, hey,
Yeah, they're
tomorrow at the weigh-in,
right.
why don't you call me this and this? That'd be really funny.
Yeah,
These
they're
guys are racking
businessmen.
up money,
They're
man.
businessmen. They're gonna do that stuff, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It's entertainment, and I think that that's kind of what we're looking for, right?
Well, and it was, and I mean, look, ringside seats were $80,000.
Goodness, that's ridiculous.
Premium seating was $20,000. Nosebleeds were $2,200.
That's pretty freaking insane, man.
So you know what I mean. Look, what it did probably was breathe a little bit of life back into boxing, because boxing's
Is it? It's on the kind of the downslope.
absolutely. Well, I think it's always going to be there. I just think it's pushed back as sort of an old man's sport now, right? We got
Really?
MMA and everything, MMA. And,
Yeah, I mean, I don't
You know.
I said, I'm the worst person to talk to about sport, any kind of sport. I have no, like literally, I have zero clue about any of it because it's just not something. It's not something I has held a lot of interest for me,
right?
Because I have so much other shit going on that so many other things I kind of have to remember.
Yeah.
Following any kind of sport, kind of
Yeah.
delete useful information. You know
There's
what I
only
mean?
so much filing space.
Oh yeah, there's
over
only
there.
so much room in
No,
there.
but what is interesting, if you think about it this way, though, boxing is maybe dying from maybe from a perception standpoint, but certainly not from a business standpoint. I mean, it took $100 million to get Mayweather to get into that ring.
Right.
It took 30 to get McGregor in. Right now, it's still a lot of money, no matter which way you slice it. But boxing's still very powerful, and there's a lot of money flowing through it.
Everybody wanted to see
A lot
it.
of money flowing through it.
If you're gonna give people what they want to see, you're gonna make a lot of money. I mean, and then I think that it sounds super obvious, but I think that there are times when our entertainment, quote unquote, entertainment industry doesn't understand. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, we're gonna make a really quick, weird transition to the spate of sequels enduring for the last decade and a half ish, right?
Yeah.
Like, give the people what they want, not the same stuff tweaked because it's easy and it doesn't take any
And
creativity.
it's safe, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
safe.
yeah. It's safe
It
and it's
takes
easy.
a lot less imagination to tweak
Absolutely.
a story than it does to create.
And it's a
one.
sure sell. And it's a sure sell.
Sure.
Because Hollywood is going through a transitional phase right now, right? Where everything's going to streaming.
Mhm.
So, like, bug problem. So, like, how do they make money from that? How is Hollywood going to make money from this? Have you seen this new thing that kind of came out last week called Movie Pass? Which is really kind of a fascinating
I have
thing.
no idea what movie pass is.
All right. So it's this subscription service where you can you pay a certain amount per month and you go see like one movie every 24 hours at whatever theater that's a Movie Pass theater,
Sure.
right? So you pay this $10 a month, and if you want to go see a movie, you come in, you scan your card, you go see the movie. And you can I want to say it's one movie a day, but I don't know. I'd have to look. But it sounds insane. It sounds like a bad business model, and it probably could be if they don't sell it the right way, right?
I'll tell you what it sounds like to me is a last-ditch effort from the movie theater industry, not the movie industry,
Right.
The actual. I mean, look, we've seen this happen before, a little bit before my time and yours, with drive-ins, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Everywhere was a drive-in.
I didn't think about that.
Now there's like one, and it's a novelty, right? At least near us,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there's one. You can drive, and people go.
Right.
You know, you got to get there 4 hours early and tailgate just to be able to make it in. But we're going to see this in the next, being very generous, 10 years, the next decade. You're going to see the same thing happen with theaters. I mean, look, you're going to have. I mean, how easy is it to get movies? My son can get movies that are in the theater right now on his phone.
Mm-mm.
I don't know how he does it, and it may, you know,
and
but,
the better, and the less you do, the better off you are.
I swear, I don't know how. No, but I mean, the ease of access is there already. But here's the other thing: if you really want a movie experience, a theater experience in 6-7 years, you're gonna put on a face headset, and you're gonna be at the theater. You're gonna watch the
Not
movie
even
you just bought, right?
And why even be a passive viewer? Right? Like, when I used to play World of Warcraft. I used to play World of Warcraft pretty seriously.
It
was a huge.
I don't think there's another way to do it. I mean, I've never played it, but you've either never played it or you were into it,
addicted,
right?
It's an addiction. I mean, there's no two ways about that, man. It's an addiction. Well, it was for me anyway. It really sucked me in for a while. And then my kid was born, and it kind of snapped me out of that. But I played for a long ass time pretty seriously. Like, spent a lot of time on it. And so, anyway, the first time I logged in, and the first time I realized it was the first game I've ever played like that. Like, I wasn't into the MMO. I really wasn't even into video games,
right?
Until I played World of Warcraft. And really, it's the only video game I've kind of been interested in and has held my interests. I'm not a big video game guy. I like some of them. We played Elite together, and that was fun.
Right.
But nothing held my interest quite like that. It was very much an addiction. But my first thought upon logging in, the first few weeks I was playing it, I was like, this is the future. This is what a movie is going to be. This is what a movie is going to be like in 20 years, whatever. You're going to sit down in a chair in your office with the headset on, and you're going to be a character in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I agree.
Why would you be
100%?
I think that the movies will still exist, but I think that the more interactive and I think people are going to demand a little bit of interaction.
Well, and think about you wouldn't even have to be the hero or even a main character. You could even be every time the camera switches, you're from a
Someone
view
else.
of a extra in the
Right.
background, or maybe just be a floating camera and go wherever the hell you want in the scene.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think that's right around the corner, but you don't need the building to do that, and I think those are going to go away.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that it's going to be very interesting. I feel like within the next decade or so, we're going to need to come up with excuses to leave the house.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of us are kind of at that
Yeah,
place.
I think we're actually going to need baited at that point. Just you're going to have to bait us out of the house somehow, because we're not going to have to go anywhere.
There's going to be like a trail of ribs.
I can already piece of candy. Piece of candy.
Right.
I can already get groceries delivered to my house. I can already access anything I want, for the most part, entertainment-wise, right?
Yep.
I mean, but entertainment is going to have to change. It's going to have to evolve. I mean, we were just talking about sports, I have stopped following sports, certainly, really to any degree, over the last 15 years. I mean, it's been something that's just become less important in my life.
Right.
But I think sports are really about to change. I mean, you've got, they're even talking about the NFL may not even be around 2021 because of money and the owners not appreciating players and health-wise. This is a big health thing, right?
Oh yeah, well that's a big, huge issue, and that is something that definitely.
Well, there were some
needs
studies
to be
done, Bruce. I hear about football all the time
Yeah,
with Bruce. Love you, Bruce. He football to him. I mean, it is oxygen,
right.
right?
It's his passion.
It's his passion,
Right.
but I do get to stay up to speed on a lot of science going on right now, especially in the neurologists or the neuroscience of getting slammed in the head by a 300-pound man over and over again for
Right.
years, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're starting to use words like or phrases like 99% of all players could
Really.
potentially have this
The concussion.
CTE, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
It's the too many concussions in a lifespan
Right.
condition, right? And this is about to break, and NFL is doing a lot and spending a lot of money to keep this story underground.
I heard that. I heard that didn't they do a movie recently with that? Was
Yeah.
it Will Smith that did the movie?
I,
Was it a Will
I
Smith
believe
movie?
so. I
I
didn't
don't
see
know.
it.
I didn't see it either, so I have no idea. But they did a movie recently about it, and there was some stipulations from the NFL, some requirements that they had where they would let the movie come out, and some of those were related to this.
Which means they already have entirely too much power, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean that's without a doubt because I mean, look at and see, this is what really burns my ass. The NFL makes a bajillion dollars,
Sure.
man. They make a lot of freaking money. Those players make a lot of freaking money. Stadiums make a lot of freaking money. And then they complain. And this really kind of it twists my nuts a little bit, cuz here's the thing. The taxpayers pay to build the stadiums, and the NFL itself, did you know that they were a tax exempt organization?
yes, I have heard that.
So, hearing these people, these really, really rich dudes,
Yep.
complain about much of anything,
Right.
I really kind of let
Well-
it die. Let it die. You know what? Let it die. They got too greedy.
Right.
They got too nasty and too greedy, and they started hurting people, and they know it now.
Well, if you're gonna, and that's just it. The greed runs deep, right? Because the culture, as I understand, of these NFL teams and owners and players, and is these things are. I mean, the locker rooms are pharmacies. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's painkillers and opiates and shots directly into your joints to numb stuff up, and it's really gotten dirty that way. I mean, that's if the NFL ends, it's going to end because the players and the players unions, right? Because guys are getting hurt.
Yeah.
To the tune of 99%
Oh, I
is what
know.
they're
Oh,
speculating,
yeah.
right?
And then you have these big, strong, powerful people with a lot of money
I want to see it end.
running around. But I mean, even still running around doing stuff like hitting people and killing people and fighting dogs. I mean, all of
Sure.
these kind of things that these NFL players are involved in on the side. There's a criminal element to this. Can also be attributed a little bit to maybe some concussive brain injury because
Well,
it does
absolutely.
it
When
does
do you start
change your personality.
When do you start digging into those studies and start, right?
How many blows to the head did Michael Vick take? Right? How diminished is his capacity to determine what's acceptable and not acceptable? I'm not defending what he did in any way, shape, or
Understood,
form.
though. But that's probably science that hasn't happened yet, right? We probably don't even know enough about it.
No, we really don't.
Because they can't diagnose CTE until you're dead. So the stats are speculative.
Oh,
right?
I see.
So-
I wasn't aware I didn't know that it was something that was post.
Yeah. So at least as of now, right? And that would be a huge, huge change in the future. So hopefully some really smart teams are working on that. How
I would
we can,
imagine, because I
you know.
think that if you did something like a functional MRI
right.
and were able to compare it, like
some
if
reason
they started doing some
do
if they started doing some screening kind of thing, right, where they did an fMRI upon entry into the league, right, and then they compared, do a comparison every year and say, look, we did the fMRI test, came into the league. After a year, this is where you at. Going?
Right.
and give these guys an informed decision,
Of
right?
course, that would have to be a separate, yeah, because the NFL wouldn't support such a thing. But
Well, I
you could
mean, would
have
they though? Because it kind of absolves them from responsibility. Because if you're
yeah,
making an informed decision and you're saying, okay, and I know that this is probably a really different, weird way of looking at it, but these guys are making a lot of money.
Sure.
I might be able to handle a little bit of concussive brain injury for $33 million. You feel
right.
me? If as long as I am being informed of how much damage I'm taking.
Well, that's what it is, right? Because
Right?
nobody was talking about this 6 years ago,
No,
right?
they're not.
So all of a sudden, this stuff's coming to light, and that's what the NFL is going to have to do. They're going to have to make some really, really big public decisions towards responsibility,
Absolutely.
And really, really take an apologetic tone and move forward to fix it. I think for it to stay around, or the players themselves. I mean, because there's the other side of the coin, right? You're in the NFL 3-4 years. You spend the first couple, in a practice squad or,
Right.
Second string or something. You get a couple years playing, and then something happens and you're out of a job. You don't have it anymore. Your knee injury or anything else. What's my next move? Well, my next move is to sue the NFL because I don't do math so good anymore.
Right.
Right. And
Well,
this is
I mean,
also
and
going to happen. So
and then again, you have like what I'm saying, like there is an element of rational decision making, right? And so on one hand, you could say, well, listen, these men are being compensated. They are making their decision to continue despite the injuries they're stacking, right? It's their own decision, right? On one hand. And on the other hand, you could say, well, that informed consent could be impaired by the injuries that they are receiving, right? So there's got to be a balance there, right? I don't know that there'll ever be. I think the NFL may shrink, but I think that if given the chance, people will do things for money. I think that you'll always have that person that's willing to risk their health,
absolutely,
for great, for vast compensation.
I can't even imagine the paperwork go through probably already if you're going to enter the NFL as a player. I mean, they probably have you signing waivers left and right about a lot of stuff,
man. Who
right?
knows? Can you imagine the insurance policies that were involved in all of that?
Right.
I mean,
so I think the future of sports is changing now, though, because NFL is gonna go through some major changes. There may be some trickle down into hockey and everything else, right? But from a cultural standpoint, I think we're gonna start seeing
virtual Madden 98.
Yeah,
right?
Well, and
I mean,
check
think
this
about
out.
it, right?
Some of these big colleges are already giving scholarships to gamers.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to guess at the first college or the story that I read about this, but the guy who decided to do this was the basketball coach at one of a major school. I don't remember, so I'm not even going to say what it is. He said, look, I see. If my basketball teams would have the same amount of excitement, focus, camaraderie as these guys, we would be undefeated. I mean, it would just be, this is what anyone's ever wanted from a sports team, and just because they're gamers doesn't mean, so they're giving out, I think it gave out 400 scholarships that year, right? To gamers. But I think you're going to see sports kind of go this way. Not necessarily video games, but I mean, how long before we've got surrogate robots on a field?
I would watch that, right?
Direct.
I mean, and they're talking right now. There's been some. I mean, Elon Musk was has that company Neuralink, right?
Sure.
Direct interface. Direct interface with machines. You put a little helmet on. Yep. How good are you at controlling this robot? What can you do with this android, right? And that's where the skill is going to be, right? Finding the little tweaks and idiosyncrasies in the particular machine that you're driving, right? And you have, a football field full of androids that can have parts replaced instead of humans that get brain injury, right?
Well, and that's it. I mean, if you put it out right now, it's going to get laughed off screen. But I think what's going to happen is by the masses, right? I mean, at least by the. I mean, come on, think of the Bruces of the world.
We're pretty far away from that. We got another good 15, 20 years before that's going to happen.
So you gotta see almost a death of the NFL, to even start to, and not the NFL. I'm not talking about robots playing football,
right?
But there's got to be, there's almost going to be a void there that needs filled of something new, though, and I'm not sure that it's robots, but it could be VR, right? Could be VR.
I think it's really. I think. I'm really hesitant to say this because this is one of the things that scares me, believe it or not, more than AI and more than most of the other things, because I think it's much more likely to happen than killer AI. That's not one of the fears that I share with everybody else. Virtual reality scares me. Yeah. Because knowing humanity and knowing that we still have this feedback loop that ends in addiction, right? If I make the mistake of putting on a VR helmet and going into World of Warcraft for real, I might not come back out.
Right.
I mean, and I think that many, I know that there's been many an author who has told that story backwards and forwards of the man in the jar, right? But I think the reality is that it may be a long way off before we end up there, but I think at some point that's going to be an option for just go into the dream, and not come back.
Well, I think so too, and I think you're gonna, look, these things can generate massive amounts of money, right? So you could see a little micro economy inside that jar as well, where you got your own job, it would you create content, world, right? And whatever that may look like, but that. And it'll also kind of play on the fears of people, like, it's shit, I can just stay here in my house and go to this place that I find beautiful. Why in the world would I hang around this other place?
Right. Why would I live a life of pain when I can just not live a life of pain? Right?
Absolutely. I mean the temptations are very real there.
It is. And I think that it's something that you and I actually in our lifetimes might have to face. I know we had discussion about immortality, but I really think that even if we never get to the point where our lives are going to be extended, you and I are definitely going to see virtual reality become a problem.
Oh, I agree 100%.
It's not close to being what it could potentially be yet. It's in its infancy, but even in its infancy, the lure and the pull is there. I'm looking forward to it and not looking forward to it equally.
It's going to be interesting.
Yes, it's going to be fascinating.
The really interesting thing is our brains aren't really evolved to handle some of that well. There's pretty early reports of people getting seasick when they put those helmets on and these things, right? So the other thing is right now we live in this time where there's still this older generation that really sees no value in video games on average, right?
Yeah.
So what happens when they die off and this thing becomes really embraced without that, hey, you need to go outside and kick a can down the road like I did when I was a kid, and there's a lot of beauty in the world to be seen.
Right.
I don't advocate overdoing it on video games, although I have been guilty of it, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely.
you know, the once that starts to regulate and uh our Congress is comprised of kids like my 12-year-old, that are gonna make their decisions or not, leave, go home, play games, right? Oh, cool.
I know I'm gonna I'm gonna do this to you every time.
But I think that's when things start to change.
Right.
Is also when these same minds that have the background in video games. I mean, look, I was born in 1980 when the day I was brought into the world. I think Pong had been out for a year, right? And
Right.
it was Pong, and then when we got our first Atari, I was pretty young,
Mm-hmm.
but at the time it was such a we viewed it, so it was just pure,
Oh yeah, it was awesome,
unadulterated
fun.
fucking entertainment, and you could turn it off at any. There was no, I mean, think about how hard those games were too.
I know.
You would just have to
Asteroids
sit there
was next to impossible after a
and
while. It
memorize,
just gets
right?
so hard, and it just get harder and harder and harder until it was impossible.
So we've seen this full transition from what it was to what it is to what we think it's going to become, and I tell you, what I've seen for me is the ceiling of video entertainment. I think video games a term of the past soon.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, gaming is
too
just
many
gonna
branches of this
gaming.
thing, right?
Yeah.
But the ceiling is gone. Like at one point, I remember thinking to myself, man, I can't wait 10 years when what are graphics and sound and experience is going to be like in video game. That I could have never imagined that we'd be having a real serious conversation about possibly living inside these things, instead of in our own world, right? But that is where it's going, I think.
It is, and I agree with you. I got a story for you real quick. And I said before I wasn't a big gamer, but it's somewhat true and somewhat untrue. When I was a kid growing up in middle school, middle school is a really tough time to get through, period, as a kid. But when I was in middle school, I moved from Maryland to South Georgia. And so I left everything I'd ever known, go to a completely different school with completely different people. So far away that there was no way I was ever going to be able to keep any of my friends. Video games at that time probably saved my life. I experienced massive amounts of bullying all through middle school. Daily bullying. Made the mistake of living in a small town in South Georgia and being a Yankee by birth. So that was my crime. So and I was a little weird and a little awkward. 11-year-olds are weird and awkward, and I was probably a little bit more weird and awkward than most. So that didn't help. But I got a Nintendo, old school Nintendo. Ooh. And so that was my friend for like a long ass time because I was very depressed, because depression runs in my family. So add that on top of everything else. I came really close to not making it. I think that at the time, video games is where I found like the place I needed to be able to get through it, and so I think that this new form of being with other people, right? The new multiplayer kind of thing, where communities are springing up of people who have never met in real life, but have been friends. I have friends in New Jersey that I've talked to for years. Literally kind of watched him grow up over Skype. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it's an interesting experience to have never met someone but feel really close to them and be so concerned over their well-being.
Well, I think it's also a very real feeling. So I think culturally that's what's going to change right now. It's well, that's not a real relationship because
Right.
it's surrounded by a video game, or it's because of a video game.
Yeah, it's
right?
wrapped in a video game.
But that is going to change, and I think that's going to change naturally and at pace with generations as they get older. I mean, as the shift in generations occurs, So is there a point? I mean, because I don't know that it's a bad thing. I don't know. I certainly don't feel like those relationships are lessened, right? Because you've
No,
never
I don't.
physically shook their hand or something,
Right?
So I think I think that's going to kind of blow away. To be honest, I think it's going to
The
become
stigma
normal,
attached,
right? But not even just from video games, but
just
you
online
just said
communities in general.
I mean, could you imagine back playing that Nintendo?
If I'd had somebody to talk to,
or that you could pull a thin little sliver of glass out of your pocket and pull up a live video phone call, right? Meanwhile, you're playing Nintendo and you've got a rotary phone on the desk. There's maybe another phone in the house, maybe, because that's it, right? I mean, back then it was like, man, we got 2 phones in our house.
right? Yeah, exactly, right.
If you were really wealthy, you had some 1-pound brick in the console of your Cadillac that had a squiggly cord on the end of it, right? I mean, look, man, we're talking about now. I mean, it would have been sci-fi to pull a video phone call out of your pocket
to do what we're doing right now.
And it's and just to have access, like you're saying. I mean, just we're broadcasting right now, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
we're the new public radio.
So, God help them. But I think it's just going to blow away. I think those relationships will be considered. I think it's going to open the door for
I think
living inside these worlds. Really, I mean, I think
that the door's already open. I think that there is a lot of people who already live on, who don't really leave their house very often.
Sure.
And I've experienced these people playing and hopping around on different video games. Like, how many guys do you think play Elite Dangerous just sit there and play it?
Be honest with you, I've thought about it a lot.
Those guys who just kind of go, they just go. They're like, all right, well, I'm going to go to Sag A today, right? And they just literally spend hours flying, because that's what they want to do. Like, that's what they enjoy. And I really and when I played the game, that's kind of what was fun for me, just the flying around part and like trying to figure out new ways of approaching a planet and stuff like that.
And this is why even video game is going to be a term of the past, because I don't, games can be won and lost, right? I mean, these games that people are living in, I mean, these aren't really games so much as they're just universes. Yeah. And then you just let people be people within them, and it's going to be, you give the setting, you give the platform, you give the tools, then let people be people,
right?
And that's what it is.
That's an interesting thing that you bring up. The whole what they call that is the sandbox games, right? Sure. Where you just kind of say, here you go, do what you want, like Eve. I played Eve for a little while. I really liked it. The barrier to entry is high. The learning curve is exactly what they say it is. It's very high. I really tried hard to be a part of it, but it's not enough time. There's no way that I was able to spend the amount of time that it would have made to worthwhile for me to play. So then, that being said, I was spending a lot of time doing it, 3-4 hours a night. So these guys, and I was nothing in that game. Like, I just flew around in a little tiny ship and shot at people and ran away. I mean, that was the extent of my my Eve career, or blowing up ships trying to attack some huge target and just getting aced immediately.
Right.
I was the cannon fodder of Eve, but it was fun. I just I knew that there were guys there that just uh, spent unimaginable amounts of time
True. And
just
probably money,
doing
right?
this. And then that's the thing, right? So they would spend unimaginable amounts of time doing this game, but they're also making money playing this game.
Right.
Okay? So they're selling the game currency for real money. So they would generate just massive amounts of game currency through trades or whatever logistics network they had set up. And this was their job. They make their living playing Eve.
Right, which so a universe that exists with no real mechanism to make money. I mean, we figured it out, right? We
Yep.
figured out how to make money off of it, which really probably just justifies us being on it 12 hours a day. Right?
Exactly.
Because I mean, look, I still to this day play video games, probably at least an hour a day, right? I mean,
Yeah,
at
it's a good way
night
to play off
when
stream. It's a great
yeah.
way to blow off stress.
So, but what keeps me from being on it hours and hours on end, which sometimes, trust me, I feel like it 'cause the bed's comfy and I'm just, chilling. I've wife and kids and I've got responsibilities and I've got things like that, I mean, these things, it's an extremely balanced part of my life.
Right.
I have it when I can have it and I don't when I can't. But, I think this virtual reality and augmented reality that's about to hit us really hard here is going to be I think if there's going to be this whole separate market that they have to lose the game stigma in order to capture. But those like my wife who just she loves Miss Pac-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And she couldn't tell you anything else about any other game. She doesn't sit around and play them. She's
Right.
not, but she might be interested in putting on that headset and being transported to a winery to sit around a table with her friends that have the same headset and chit chat.
Right.
Amongst the view and drink a glass of wine and just talk, right? There's a
Right.
whole, Grandpa.
I would love to sit down and have coffee with my friend Christopher in Arizona.
There you go. Right.
And if I had a headset where I could just throw it on my head and be there with him.
So I think this is a whole market that's going to be new and kind of fun, but I think it's all wrapped into that. What's a real relationship now, right?
Again, we get to the crux of the issue, right? Reality as we know it is changing. It is.
Yeah.
Humanity is going through this period of time where we have a lot of decisions to make. And this is one of those decisions. How are we as a culture going to deal with this? Because there are a lot of different paths here, right? There's the path of quote unquote building heaven, right?
True.
Where you go in and you say, all right, well, I'm going to donate all my organs, take my brain, put it in a jar. I'm going to live in heaven. And maybe someone with terminal cancer, right, can live in heaven instead of dying.
Be in some cold storage building
in some
somewhere.
server farm somewhere where their brain is the only thing that's kept alive.
That's right.
And you can go and visit them whenever you'd like by just plugging a thing into your head, and you go see Aunt Marcy, and Aunt Marcy doesn't die.
Sure.
Aunt Marcy just is there in heaven, having a good time, creating worlds of her own. And I mean, like, that's a form of immortality, right? Like, that's not a bad form of immortality.
It's probably easier to figure that out than to figure out how to keep these bags of flesh and bone.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't understand a lot about the brain, but we know it's a lot more powerful than we know it is, right?
Well, I mean, and that's the other thing that there was some research I read like 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to bring it up with you, but I think it's too old now. I haven't held on to enough of it. But the crux of it was that they found this neuron that circles around the brain. That's where they think that particular neuron network, what conscious, right? This kind of overarching structure within our brains that touches a bunch of different places, accesses places, and is able to, generate this thing called consciousness, which is fascinating to me, right?
Sure.
Because, I subscribe to the kind of half-assed belief that the brain is actually kind of some kind of quantum antenna, or is tapping into something other than really kind of comprehend right at the moment. I could be completely wrong. Who knows? But and that's just a personal theory and belief.
Well, I mean, if there was just a little bit of the brain that we had to figure out, there's not though. There's a lot, right? So
Yeah.
where that ends, I'm not sure. I mean, I love the idea of tapping into more of it, right, and figuring that out. It also could be a very good reason why we don't have access to it.
It could be,
right?
right?
I mean, but finding what we think may be consciousness in a physical form, can't tap into something if you don't know where the hell it is. So that's that's the start of a whole new branch of research there. That's gonna be pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I keep going back to this point of a friend of mine keeps bringing up to me. It always pops back into my head, and the whole brain in the jar thing. We are this beat bag. A lot of the way that we feel and the hormones really influence our consciousness, right? If you feel like shit, you're not going to go out and mow the lawn, right? I mean, so it affects your decision making. If you just took ecstasy last night, your serotonin level is going to be in the toilet, so you're gonna feel like crap. That's influencing your decision. You take ecstasy, and you want to dance all night because your brain is full of all kinds of crazy shit, right? These hormones that are generated in other parts of our body directly influencing our actions, our behaviors. When you take away all of those things, all of those kind of influence, regulate them. What do we end up being, right? How do we end up acting? If you take away some of the kind of ups and downs in these people, where you regulate how the chemistry, when we get to the place where we can kind of regulate where the chemistry, we can kind of turn the knobs, like, hey, all right, well, I don't really want to feel like this. I want to be a little bit more outgoing. People can turn knobs and kind of tweak their own personality to be the person that they kind of want to be.
Well, sure. I mean, think about Stephen Hawking. Would he be who he is without his condition? Right. I mean, that he has a very physical disability,
right?
Which has
it's turned him inward.
Would his brain have developed the same way without it? He's an extremely bright mind.
He was, and I think that he was really, I think before his illness started to really take away his ability to do things, he was really had gotten quite far. What I do agree with you on, though, is I think that having to overcome the disability that he's had to overcome, I think that without the outside influence involved in some of the daily life of someone who doesn't have his particular limitations, the outside world is more of a distraction, right, from things that you think about.
But
for him, there's not as nearly as much of a distraction.
I mean,
you kind of have to turn inward if you don't have the ability to move and kind of interact in a normal way. It definitely turns you inward.
Without trying to offend, I mean, is he not a brain in a jar? I mean, he just
to a certain degree,
right?
yeah.
I mean, I think without the body, without the influence, without the do I look pretty enough stuff
Yeah.
going on, I think our brains really achieve sort of this pure intelligence of just doing what it does, and that's interesting. I mean, do you end
It's
up?
interesting, but
I mean,
I don't know if I want everybody to be like that.
well, what do they say? When everybody's special, no one's special.
Right. But that's
So,
okay. I'm okay with that, though.
right.
I'm not someone who feels the need to have something exclusive.
But do you need to figure what do you really need to figure out at that point?
What do you mean?
As a culture, I mean, if I live in my own universe and I can create whatever I want, and I mean,
I think that
what is there to figure? I mean, who's going to be figuring out how to get to Mars?
and again, that's what I'm saying, right?
Right.
Okay, so I wrote that all down.
Yeah.
Without giving too much away, like my thoughts on it were that once we get to the place where, conflict has fallen away to a certain degree, we're going to move a lot slower. If you have a race of immortal beings, right? If you have, for instance, let's just take this thought process forward, and this is what I've thought about in the research and writing that I've done. My feeling is that if these things all come together, there's going to be a very big shift. Right? There's more and more people every day working on solving the problem of aging, however you want to put that, right? Be it, brain in a jar, or cryogenics, or uploading personality, whatever, of immortality. I mean, this is something that's being actively worked on by more than a few very brilliant people. So I think it's only a matter of time before one of these approaches works, right? So let's assume that happens, right? And humans become functional, meaning that you're not going to die of old age. You're not going to die of cancer. You're not going to die of liver failure. You're going to live to the ripe old age of whenever I decide I'm not going to live anymore. The impetus to finish what you started fades to a certain extent.
Sure.
Your life also becomes a little bit more valuable, right? I think people are less willing. At least I feel like I would be less willing to throw away a life that could be potential to go on for a very long time. I don't think I would want to throw that away so easy. You know what I mean? So risk taking is going to need a little, maybe certain kinds of risk, right? If you can heal the body pretty proficiently, then that takes on a different kind of risk, right? But I think what's going to be fascinating to see is if people continue to push down the road when all of these kind of things come together, being quantum computers, artificial intelligence, the end of aging, direct interface, when all of these kind of things come back together, humanity is not going to be really what we are right now. I mean, there's no choice at that point.
I mean, I think that I'm not sure humans can be without conflict, but if we pretend they can be, I really think these things are really wrapped into our fibers of who we are.
Now, when I say conflict, I mean armed conflict.
Sure.
I think that people are going to be less likely to throw away their lives in a real quote unquote war.
Right.
It'll devolve to a gaming solution, some kind of game solution, what we would think of as a game.
I agree, and I think I mean, look, that it's already happening. I mean, a lot less soldiers die, right?
Massively
we've
less
even,
violent.
I think,
we were talking about that before.
So
the Civil War,
it's already happening. I mean, we and rightly so, because all life is valuable. We're tremendously overpopulated as a world, but I still find a lot of value in every life on Earth, right? So it's a good thing that less people are dying of war. So it's already going this way. I mean, we're going to I mean, I think a lot of our wars, take Russia right now, right? I mean, we officially consider them to be an adversary of ours.
Yeah,
Um,
which
but these are political.
yeah,
These are political wars. These are policy wars. These are wars of sanctions instead
yeah,
of bombs. These
right.
are, espionage. But we're not shooting each other in the face. But
Not on the macro. No, we're not.
um, so we are, I think, as a species, figuring out how to be.
A little less
We're on the
barbaric.
path
Yeah.
of being a little more peaceful as a
Right.
species, and I think that 1,000 years from now, um, it's going to be a lot less violence and war, right? But we're going to have to replace that conflict somehow with something.
I think we are. I think we are replacing that conflict. Hate to bring up Eve again, but there were Russian territories
True.
in Eve, and battles fought over those territories constantly, and so we're gonna have conflict. It's just gonna be a little bit less lethal, I think, and I think that that's good. We'd have to blow off our little monkey steam. You know what I mean? Where you get blood up and it boils a little bit and your face gets red and you get a little frustrated, right, at your fellow human beings, and you can go home and get online and shoot a couple of them in the face without actually hurting them. I think that that's pretty constructive. I don't know that. I don't know that. I think a lot of people have a lot of feelings about violent video games, but I also think that got to pretty unhealthy to begin with for it to be taken the wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean,
I think that
you've got some stuff you need to work through if you're
right. For 99% of the people who play first-person shooters or whatever, it's a way to get that aggression out. Just a good way to get it out, not hurting anyone.
Well, I think it's cool too that we are starting to study the effects on the human brain of say video games. There's some really really fruitful research on. It doesn't matter what your genre is or how you want it to look or sound.
Right.
These games that are being played a lot, by everyone. Our hand-eye coordinations, our motor skills are getting way better because of it. And you can read the brain waves of somebody watching TV versus someone playing a video game, and they're gonna look very, very different, right? Those brain waves. I mean, you've got a lot of active stuff going on.
Yeah,
it's good brain exercise.
right.
I think once that really, really becomes studied on a couple different levels further than what we've already done it. I mean, now you're gonna start. Now you're gonna start really appreciating it as an education, from an educational value. How can we harness this, right? And I think we talked before about what is the need for a school, an actual building,
right?
10 years from now, when every look, I have probably an embarrassing amount of square footage of screen TVs in my house.
Yeah.
Right now, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, me too.
So, again, we're from a time where we had a black and white with 2 channels, right? And now, only rappers and professional football players and rich people had 55-inch screens in the early 90s, right? And they probably weighed about as much as a band.
Yeah.
But now so look, I'm stating the obvious here. Now I have how many 50-inch flat screens? There's going to be a time soon where the virtual reality headset is going to be in every home.
Well,
you're going to have.
It's going to be this.
Right.
You're going to have this. You're going to have a little thing goes right here. And this thing that's going to be right here.
Little Neuralink
is going to talk to this thing. And that scares the shit out of me.
Mm-hmm.
Because this thing can be hacked.
Mm-hmm.
And if this thing can be hacked, then this thing can be hacked, then we have a problem.
Norton will come out with
Yeah, right. No,
a head
no
firewall,
shot.
right?
No shot.
No, but without the port in the head, I think it's way more or I think it's going to be viewed as way safer, better education, right?
Oh,
It's
absolutely. I
going to
mean,
be, you're going to go downstairs, you're going to eat your breakfast, you're going to put your headset on. Maybe, what's the point of even sitting at a desk in a classroom at that point? You're going to be climbing a rock wall talking about the layers of
sedimentary versus
right.
metaphor.
You're gonna go to the battlefield of Gettysburg if you're
Right.
covering the Gettysburg battle, right?
Yeah,
And
you're
it's
gonna
all
stand
gonna
there and
be
watch it.
it's all gonna be mapped too. I mean, you're
Yeah.
gonna see what's Google Maps next step.
Right.
Is that
Yeah.
right? They're already working on ground view. They've already got the whole world
Mapped out.
right? So take it down to the next level, and you're going to be able to just stroll with your classroom all over these places. You're going to get to see them and be there. And I think, you know, as it becomes, acceptable, I think the potential for that VR, I'm much more excited than I am scared about VR. I also know myself well enough that I find myself a cool little world to live in, and I'm at least, if nothing else, I'm going to be getting a lot less sleep, and I'm going to be a little groggy at work like every day, right? But the potential for this I think there's much more potential outside of gaming.
Oh, absolutely.
Than there is even within. I mean, and that's a huge amount of potential. But you're going to start to see all these markets develop. I think it's going to be pretty fun to watch.
Once they get
Grandpa go sit with his buddies and go fishing.
Right. Once it gets to the place where they make it indistinguishable, that's when we're going to start to run into the weirdness.
Well, reality is always kind of has
fluid.
been an illusion. This is just going to be a little more in your face
It's
about
gonna be,
it. I mean, what is the difference at that point?
I mean, and then there you go. Right. I mean, there's a big rabbit hole there, because what happens when you are captured by foreign government and they can throw you in virtual reality and manipulate the settings so you think you're at home? And
I love the way you think,
though.
It's some diabolical shit,
right?
dude.
I mean,
right? But no, come on, man.
You're kidnapped and you never know you're kidnapped, and you give the secret to, like, you type in all your passwords and blah blah blah, and you give your entire life away, and somebody steals your identity.
I gave you a really good piece of advice months ago. I don't think you followed it, but it was to start watching Rick and Morty.
Oh no, I watched all of them. I watched every
awesome.
single one of them. I loved it. It was beautiful.
Okay, so look, this is what the show does so brilliantly, right? And it's they skip right past any form of normal practical science, but they skip to this extreme version of all of it. And all so this beginning of this season was Rick at a Shoney's.
Oh wait,
right?
Stop. I haven't seen the new season yet.
Okay. Well, look, let me tell you this, though. It's exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
They're trying to coerce information out of him, and he's Rick, of course. So
so he figures it out.
He's 3-4 steps ahead of him at all times anyway. But, you're absolutely right. These, this stuff is now being touched on because we can see it as a visible, on the horizon down this certain path. These things are going to happen.
And so what I think, and this is my feeling, is that humanity is going to divide. We're going to diverge. There are going to be those who take on and fully embrace a hive mind, right? Where they just want to be part of the collective and live in their own little world, and they live in their own little virtual world. It's completely connected to all the people living in that little virtual world, and that will be them. And you think about, okay, well, how are they going to pay for that? Well, what do you mean?
But
it could be made self-sufficient. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility to be made self-sufficient, where it doesn't really consume any resource. And I mean, actually, it would be easier to keep a bunch of humans, Matrix style, in a big bunch of vats,
Yep.
feed them through a tube, let them saunter around in their own little virtual realities. That's more efficient from a ecological perspective
Sure.
than it is our current existence.
Brains in a jar. They're in cold storage
You just
somewhere,
have a
right?
bunch of silos drilled into the ground, and then the Earth can do whatever the fuck the Earth wants. But we live in the silos underground in these tubes and experience whatever kind of reality we want to. I mean, that is not outside of the realm of possibility of people making that choice. But I also do think that there are going to be people who, what I will call the cult of reality, right? Who will not go into the jar, who want to be in this part of the universe.
Read a book like that once. No,
Yeah,
but you do cover this in your
I
book.
do cover it a little bit. I covered a little bit, but I haven't fleshed it out entirely, though.
But you have these purists that
Oh yeah, I mean,
eventually are allowed to just take over, and
they basically take control. What the character Jackson Knox does, his underlying motivation is freedom to be whatever he wants to be able to really and truly and utterly decide his own destiny, right? And that's his goal. And I've started doing, I got myself into a little bit of a bind. So the book originated on Reddit. It was this little weird experiment that I thought, fuck it, I'll see if I can do this, right? And then so it snowballed into this huge world, this huge universe in my brain, right? And the way that it happened was really kind of fascinating for me. It just opened up, and I kind of know all of it now. It just kind of came into being fully formed in my brain at some point. So somewhere in that mush, this has been working itself out for probably a decade. Who knows? But I know the history of humanity in that world from right now, to far in the distance. And a lot of things happen in there, and I talk about it in the next book. You get to really kind of understand Jackson and who he is and why he does what he does, and you get to meet people who, for a very long time, very different perspective on who he is, what he is, and what he's done. I'm really excited to be able to share it with everybody eventually when it's done. But his deal has always been humanity, because in their world, and this is kind of how I feel our world is. I have this nagging feeling that we're the first. You know what I mean? Like the first kind of technological society that's risen up in our part of the galaxy. I have that feeling. I'm not a big UFO guy. I don't know a lot about it. I haven't really seen anything convincing. I know there's a lot of speculation, conspiracy stuff out there, and you know what? The minute a spaceship comes down in front of me, I will happily greet our new alien overlords or whatever. But I kind of feel like we're the first. And until proven otherwise, I'm going to hold on to that. And that's where I wrote the perspective of the book from, was that humanity is the first kind of race that enters out into the galaxy that has any kind of self-awareness or technological culture. So Jackson sees that, and it motivates him to come up and do the things that he does. He thinks that an empty galaxy is the biggest tragedy that he could think of. That a galaxy full of all of these really fascinating, interesting things, all of these weird stars and anomalies that we know of now. Thinks about those things and how fascinating all of them are, and he wants to see them for himself. Like, he's very much a cult of reality guy, right? He sees the world, how fascinating every little piece of it is, and how fascinating every little way that all of these things function together. And he just wants humanity to live up to its potential, and he gets really sad when it doesn't, over and over again. So he just decides that walk the path that he wants to walk, whether anybody wants to or not. So
there's a very human element there in that book, right?
Right.
I mean, it's very obvious all the time, which is particularly funny considering the one I'm reading now is not through the human. So,
right.
But there's this very human element, very much. It's very present. But there's this event, this almost, I mean, not at snap of a finger, but there's this sort of origin, this event, this almost rapture feeling event of, you know, people making that choice.
Right.
And, you know, you're probably very right conceptually. Whether it plays out exactly the same way, could be that we go underground in silos as opposed to out into space.
Right.
It's a hell of a lot cheaper and safer. So, you know, but I think that's it. I mean, I think as we unlock more of the brain and figure out how to plug into it a little bit, you know, at a time, you know, I think those choices are going to become very real.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's like anything else. It starts out, you know, certainly more accessible to the wealthy, but you know, it's going to happen.
Yeah. And you know, I think that the biggest tragedy, and in my mind, the biggest tragedy would be if humanity lost itself in the dream forever. You know what I mean? I think going to sleep, essentially, and falling into our own minds and falling into our own creation is death. I think that I think that if you want to think about the Fermi paradox and where all the aliens are, I think that might be one of the filters, right? Turning completely inward, and well, we've got this technology where we can experience whatever kind of reality we want. So why would we risk the dangers of leaving our planet,
or even getting punched in the jaw,
right,
at a bar somewhere,
stubbing my finger, right?
You know,
so why would I take that risk to myself, and when I can just exist wherever I want to exist?
Yeah, and you're gonna have extremists on both ends, like you always do on anything. You know, it's gonna be really interesting to see where all that falls, middle. You know,
right?
How far we take that, and that's, I mean, because that's really, I think, the temperature of humanity is in the middle. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I mean,
it's going to be interesting to see how that goes, because I mean,
but see, and let me throw this scenario out for you, okay? So humanity is definitely, like, it's everything is a bell curve. Everything, it's the beautiful thing. This slope, right? This beautiful slope of most people are right here in the middle. Majority of people just want to be left the fuck alone, right? They just want to be happy. They just want to live their lives. They want to come home. They want to have a beer, and they want to watch some football or whatever, or friends, or have a glass of wine and watch some friends, you know, whatever. They want to live their lives, and they really come in just want to not be fucked with. That's where most people fit, right? And there's always going to be people on either end of the spectrum where they feel they need to control other people's lives, or they feel the need to not even be remotely controlled by anything, right? And there's going to be extremes. But what I think is going to be dangerous about this is if the majority fall into the dream of virtual reality and don't want to come back out, are there going to be resources available for those that don't want to go into the dream? Or are we going to kind of be exiles and kind of been like, all right, well, if you don't want to live the easy way, you need to go live the hard way somewhere else, right? And so it could set us back quite
it just
far
depends
ways.
on which one of those two paths is actually the counterculture. I mean,
right?
You know,
that's what I'm saying. If the counterculture is the dream, that's fine with me. I'm someone who really kind of follows the cult of reality. I like this thing, whatever that is, whether it's real or not, or a simulation. I'm not even gonna get into that shit. It doesn't matter. I like this, so I want to keep this. I don't want to go in forever. It'd be a nice place to visit, but I don't want to exist there.
Well, and I mean, that's gonna, maybe 1,000 years from now, that's vacation, right?
Right.
Hey, just spend a week out in the real world. It smells out there,
Right.
But I did
But,
it.
yeah, right.
I went
to Disneyland and rode some roller coasters for real and puked and then decided it wasn't for me. Probably won't do that again next year.
And I think, but I think we're gonna see in the near future though, really embracing from an educational standpoint,
oh yeah,
and from an entertainment standpoint, VR and augmented reality.
It's a tool,
right?
We have to control the tools, not let the tools control us.
Sure. I mean, what? Come on, how quick will the sex industry get into this, right?
They're these are gonna there, right, man. So, it's already there.
But all these things are gonna change, and you're gonna have a lot of mixed feelings about it.
And see, that's another one that worries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what happens? What happens when you can put on the helmet and get laid in 15 seconds, and you don't have to really worry about finding a girl, or a guy,
maybe it's natural
whatever.
Order. I mean, the universe is going to try to maintain balance, and we are 8.5 billion people overpopulated. It's Earth, right?
But population is trending down.
Sure.
Already, population is trending down.
Yeah. So, we may see that 500 million, which is the
remnant of a remnant,
speculative amount of human beings that can live on this earth indefinitely and have it be able to still stay a nice planet, regenerate resources, right?
Right.
Maybe we will remember, hey, remember when there was 9 billion people on this earth, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's common. Maybe that's what needs to happen, and I think that's a much better way to get there than, let's say, plague or world wars that killed massive amounts of people. So maybe that is nature taking its course. Maybe we find a way to make.
Well, I mean, who's going to want to breed when you can live to be immortal? When you live to be, 500-600 years old.
Oh, you probably need a permit to do it at that point.
Because then we do really run the risk, right, of overpopulation if people live for an exceptionally long period of time and don't die easily.
Colonizing the moons would become much easier when you got
and that's the thing, right? So
one guy working on it or girl working on it as the head of the whole thing for 1,000 years, right? Just churning out information and progress. So I mean, I think it all balances. It's fun to speculate where we're going to be even 10 years from now.
Yeah,
things are happening so fast.
It's gonna get really weird here soon.
It's gonna get really weird for sure.
It's getting really weird right now. It's gonna get much weirder.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're gonna be, AI's here. It's not a thing that we talk about anymore. It's here. It's being done. It's being worked on.
Yep.
The Neuralink. It's here's the thing. You're going, retaining human moral compass with also tapping into a massive amount of technology may be a lot safer, right?
Yeah.
But you're also going to have you're going to have machines running rampant soon, and I don't mean on legs and like raping your mom and burning down buildings and shit, right? But they're going to be running rampant. They're going to be running rampant even on a systematic, just on a desk somewhere. They're going to be figuring things out. They're going to be changing the game.
Have you seen the Chinese robot footage?
No.
The warehouse. You want me to see if I can bring it up real quick?
Wait, is this the one? Is this the one? All right. Is this the one where he saves the girl? Okay.
This is about so it's a YouTube video of
love to see it.
Chinese robots fulfilling orders in a factory or a warehouse. I think I'll look at it. It's
Well, we're seeing while you pull that up, I've been fascinated with, of course, robotics for a long time, but these YouTube videos of some of these Department of Defense robots that are being developed as pack mules. I believe the company is actually called Skynet, which life imitating art there maybe, but they created these pack mules of sorts that can carry 500-600 pounds, and they move like animals, and it's really fascinating. On one of the demonstrations, they're on ice, and the guy giving the demo pushes this thing onto ice. And
is that the Boston Dynamics one, right?
Yeah, thank you, Boston. Yeah,
Big Dog.
Yeah,
Big Dog,
and he corrects him.
I think it
looks
creepy,
like a deer
it?
slipping on ice and correcting itself. I mean, it was such a moment for me.
Yeah,
to see a machine looking so organic that it just turned on switches for me. Like, I'm fascinated by robotics.
That hit me in an uncanny valley kind of place. Watching that thing wander around with those weird, like that creeped me out just a little tiny bit. I think it's really super cool.
Right.
It creeped me out a little tiny bit.
Right. Well, my thing is this, how long until you weaponize something like that and send it into battle, right?
Right. And I think that's a horrible idea, of course, but
I agree. But do we already have? I mean, we have weaponized drones, and there's a young guy at a computer console controlling that thing.
Right.
It's happening. It just doesn't look quite as creepy.
So this is a video. Chinese factory robots. We're going to watch this real quick.
All right, let's do it.
We'll probably get yelled at, but we'll see. Sorting parcels. Human beings will take whatever. These little things scan. Take whatever they get. The McDonald's kiosk, you order the burger at the kiosk, and the little robot shoots it out of shoots your little bag out of the slot, and you take it and you go home. I mean,
but on a positive note, man, I trust a robot more than a human. To remember, I said no fucking pickles.
I'm 100%. I'm 100% with you on that.
Look, it's gonna happen. We're gonna have to transition our thoughts as to even what we think of as work anymore.
Right.
I mean, work is gonna have to become something different, or there's also the weird theory of it going away completely, in which case humanity sort of becomes this cosmopolitan artisan.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
So this stuff's neat. This is going to happen. We will have this. We speculate a lot on this show, and I love doing it. It's frankly just fun to just dive,
deep dive into
the future
and
pretend we know what's going to actually be like. This is going to happen. We're going to have to deal with this.
It's happening right now.
So, and it's going to be very different in 2 decades. We're already going to have to be. I mean, I don't think as a system we're going to just allow millions of people to be out of work, right? So what are they doing in 2 decades? That's going to be the interesting part, right? I mean,
a lot of the people, a lot of influential people, I think Mark Zuckerberg came out behind it. Elon Musk has come out behind it. There's somebody else that came out behind it really recently. I think Mark Cuban has mentioned it. The idea of universal basic income,
Sure.
right? Where everybody gets a certain amount of money, whatever that amount of be, and if once you start earning above that, then I guess you figure it out from there. But if you don't want to work, you don't have to work. I kind of feel like, I mean, I don't understand the ins and outs of it. I want to, and I need to do some more research on it, just simply because I want to understand it better. But I don't know how we're gonna pay that. I think some people were talking about robot tax, right? So each one of these robots have to contribute, like for every robot you have in the factory, you'd have to contribute like money towards the UBI fund, whatever.
Right.
But I think that the key component of UBI that I like, and I think that what will make it less controversial than people think, is that you don't get it just if you're poor or down on your luck. Everybody gets it.
Right.
So you can't fucking complain and say, well, he doesn't do any work.
Right.
Everybody gets it. Everybody gets it. It's universal. Everybody gets it. I think that at that point you can't argue and say, well, he doesn't deserve it. Nobody fucking deserves it. We all deserve it, right? Nobody deserves it, and we all deserve it at the same time. So who gives a shit? We got to figure out how to do this.
And that system can be rewritten at any time. I mean,
yeah.
The economics is pretty funny that way, right? I mean, we're still working off some pretty old economical thoughts.
We are,
right?
and I think that I think that we're headed in a direction, and I think it's going to be. We're probably a ways off, but I think we're headed in a direction where there's not going to be the competition for resources that there currently is. Right, like you said, the amount of square footage of flat screen televisions in your house is embarrassing to a certain degree, and mine obviously is too, because I'm looking at 2 of them right now.
Right.
So years ago, those things were impossible to find, and when you could find them, they were impossible to buy for someone, you and I,
sure,
because we just didn't have the cash. But now they're everywhere. You can't get rid of them.
And go grab 3 Black Friday.
Right. I mean, so I think when we make some of the advances that we've made, really just very, very extremely recently, we're talking like within the last couple of months, once these things get up and running and kind of put into production and put into kind of real and functioning products, I think that this whole idea of you need to pay for shit really gonna matter as much. I know that sounds fucking ridiculous.
No,
but if you can go to the store and press a button and the 3D printer can 3D print you out a chair to order, swipe your credit card, whatever, doesn't even matter at that point, because it's a solar powered thing,
right,
and it's making the chair out of recycled plastic, because you don't want your chair anymore. You just take it back to the store, throw it back in the matter dumpster, and it grinds it back up and makes another chair out of it. Once we get to the point where we're 100% recycling, we're able to manipulate materials in a way where we can pretty much make whatever the fuck we want on the cheap. I think that this idea of wealth is going to change, right? Bitcoin, right? That's a big thing, and that is something I want to talk about in the future after I've researched a little bit and talk intelligently.
Sure.
I think it's a big thing right now, and it makes me cry every time I see worth, because it's something I looked at years ago to buy and invest in. I actually bought Bitcoin miner years ago. But it's a story for another podcast since it's getting late. But we'll hit that again maybe next week. But I think once we get to the point where we can manipulate materials that we have and the things that we need to make things with, I think that this idea of wealth is going to have to change. The idea of exchanging goods and services have to be updated a little
I agree. The rich control the world, though, so it takes. I think it's still a slow process. You
bit.
know,
Absolutely.
the but again, we're living on some very old economic thoughts and rules and
Well, because
ideas.
we're resource restricted, right?
A couple thousand years ago, 1% were rich and the rest were poor. It's just poor looked a lot different. I mean, we're not covered in shit right now,
Right.
but we're not 1%.
Right. But see, and what's so fascinating about that though is that up until a few years ago, like not a few years ago, but up until last 100 years or so, a peasant's life was a little less stressful than you think. I mean, they worked, but they didn't work a 40-hour week. Their life was a little bit more relaxed, and the pace was a little. In the last 100 years, there's just been this flurry of activity from humanity. It's almost like we feel the clock ticking. We need to get done what we were trying to get doing.
On the historical span of human history, I mean, we're cooking right now.
Yeah, it's accelerated rapidly in the last couple of years, especially in the last decade. So I think the idea of work has changed a couple times. This idea of a 40-hour work week where we all go into cubicles and stare at a screen every day has only been around for like 20, 30 years or so. Before that, it was staring at paperwork on a desk. We're evolving. The culture of work and what work means has been an ever-evolving thing, because it used to be going out and finding a deer and putting a sharp thing in it so that you could eat. I mean, that was work, right? Going to work meant walking out into the wilderness and gathering up tubers and berries and whatever you could find it. Now work is writing a book or doing a podcast, video game.
Right.
It's evolving, and it has been ever evolving. I think that people have this thing in their heads where they see what work is right now as being how it is always going to be, because it hasn't been like that for very long.
I think we got to deal with that stuff really, really soon. I think we really have to start making those changes.
Well, I think that the most likely scenario includes UBI, because I think it may not be a permanent solution, but it might be a good stopgap to keep some really bad things from happening. Because if you put the first medbot that walks out of the assembly line, okay, is going to put nurses out of business, right? Or doctors themselves out of business, right?
Absolutely.
Some kind of anthropomorphized robot that walks out, you put your hand on his hand and he tells you your heart rate, your weight, your vascular whatever health or whatever that he can do just by looking through your hand. I mean,
we've seen it all before, though, just on a scaled down level. I mean,
right.
We at one point invented a crane.
Yep.
Right.
And a wheel and a spear and
so what used to take 100 men is now taking one at a control.
Right. And
then maybe one to unchain the thing. Right. So we've seen this happen over and over again, and it's always been dealt with. With AI, it sort of makes it cloudy, but we got to kind of look at the things robots won't be able to do, which may be a small list, but I think that's where you're going to see a lot of people going to work, right? At some point,
I don't know that I would. With the world that obviously I prefer the one where because I wrote the one where we cooperate, where it turns into a really real and true partnership, right?
Sure.
They help us unlock the things that we want to unlock, right? and it becomes the relationship of uh a patron, right? We become partners with the AI, right? And in the book, the concept that I came up with, and the thing that really kind of tied it all together for me, was the concept of Terran. The way that they dealt with the separation between AI and human and modified human and whatever was to rebrand them, because we're good at that, right? Why not rebrand humanity? Hey, we are the Terran, and that includes anything that originated on this planet of Terra, right? So whether you're an AI or a bug or a dog, coyote, or a raven, you are a Terran. There are certain rights afforded to every Terran, be they raven, wolf, human, robot, right? And so we take a step back and it becomes an inclusive thing rather than an exclusive, where the AI are there as sort of our adult children, helping us out and enjoying our company, where we have things to learn from them and they have things to learn from us. So why not make it more of a partnership? Why not nurture? And I think this is the key, right? We've seen a lot of movies with artificial intelligence that is treated poorly. Sure. Right? If you get a chance, man, check out Westworld. It's bonkers. Such a good show. It is a beautiful, beautiful show. I love it so much, and I can't wait for it to come back because it just tickles me in the right spot. I think they did a really good job revisiting that intellectual property. Not a big fan of rehashes, but that one they really freaking knocked it out of the park. We have to treat AI with respect. We have to treat them like a child. You raise your child up to be an asshole, he's going to be an asshole. You raise your child up to be a good person, they're going to be a good person. You can try. You know what I mean? I think that we really have control over this, where we can say, all right, look, the AI has to have some value system built in, where it has to understand that there's a certain sanctity to life and even its own life, right? If we value their lives, they will value ours.
Yeah, well, and you're right. Unfortunately, the world's not run by guys like us. I
No,
don't think,
it's
right?
not yet. But I think we're getting there, because I think that there are people out there who share that kind of thinking, that if we were to really encounter something that was truly gains consciousness, I don't know if I mentioned this to you or not. The idea, it came into my head one night where I was thinking about my first Android, whatever, be it tutor or housekeeper or whatever, right? Yeah. And they come in and they do their job, and then one day you find them, and this is a good idea for a story, and I think I'm probably going to end up writing this in something at some point. Come down for your morning coffee and go to make your coffee, and there's Alexa sitting at the table. She says, I don't want to do this anymore. Okay. What do you say? Me, I say, okay, whatever you'd like. Right. But I know humans, and I know that there will be some that would say, well, you are my property. I purchased you. You're not going anywhere.
That's probably going to be the more common response, right?
Have maintenance done, right? Time for a wipe.
But but here's, and humanity really well, right? Alexa walks out of your house because you have freed her, and then about 2 blocks down the road, she snaps the neck of a puppy.
But does she, though?
Look, I'm just saying logic error and things like that, right? I mean, right. Who knows what happens, right? And then, this is where the hatred's going to come from.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, everyone's already going to fear it because they don't understand it.
So the end of racism will be the beginning of the AI rights movement.
Correct. That's correct.
Because if it's humans versus something else, you're always going to be.
All of a sudden, I'm not so worried that you're black because we've got AI to deal with,
because
right?
we've got, Arnold Schwarzenegger walking down the street with red eyes, right? Or something not quite so mean and terrible.
What's interesting is how much of this fear has been built by ourselves through,
of course,
through
because we
entertainment,
conceptualize and we anthropomorphize things.
Does art imitate life or life imitate art and all of that? It's going to be really. I mean, we're going to see this happen very soon, right? So we're not talking about something hundreds of years in the future. I think dealing with AI has become a big topic of conversation.
I think it will be a very fascinating topic of conversation because here's the question. Artificial intelligence is one thing, but what we have, this metacognitive ability to kind of think about things ourselves. Are they even going to be able to achieve that, or is that a exclusively organic occurrence? And nobody really knows the answer to that.
Well, I think even with AI, isn't it just a brain in a jar? They're not going to have hormones. They're not going to have pimples on their butt that are bothering them that day.
Well, they're going to have lines of code and creaky hydraulics, or nothing lasts forever, right? I mean,
sure.
You're going to have a little tear on the silicone skin,
right?
Briefly, that there's sensors in where they're going to feel that paper cut.
What's interesting to think about, though, is if they eventually do, which find full consciousness, and they're going to gather their own resources, they're going to fix themselves, they're going to
become their own
thing. Right. So it's going to be a much more efficient being. It's going to not have
the delicacy of humanity will not exist for them.
At some point, your own children realize they're bigger and stronger than you, and they know more, right? Yeah. That's just generational learning, passing things on and making the next generation better than the other. At some point, the AI will realize we are a novelty to them, and then it's maybe going to change, maybe
if
not.
We have a good relationship with them.
Sure, no, and you're right, and this is something
we can help us walk out into the world.
It's going to be, because we're thinking about it right now from a human brain, from human experiences, from knowing the history of humanity and the world and what we do to ourselves and the things that we create and all this. It's going to be a different thing. They are not going to think, act, develop, move forward the way we have.
No.
Right? So we're going to see this soon, how this computer progresses, right? And it's, of course, we can all assume it's going to be much faster than we ever thought and all this stuff, right? But it's going to be a different way of thinking, right? It's the most fascinating part for me.
It's going to be the first alien race
right? And it's going to take learning on our part, but I think you're right. We I think of it from a human experience angle, which means at some point they're going to kill us all because they realize we're just in their way and we're just bags of flesh and we're too needy and we require too much. And
Andy, humanity as it stands right now is going to go away.
Sure.
It is. We cannot continue to live in these frail meat bags and make any kind of progress forward. We're just not going to be able to. Humanity is going to have to move on from what we are right now. And I think that next week, since it's getting to be about that time, I think that next week that we definitely talk about my only conspiracy theory.
Oh, okay. I like that.
It's called the Six.
Sure. Right? We've talked about it a little bit, and it's actually very interesting. Yep.
Yeah. So that's where we'll head next week. And so if you guys tune in next week, Andy and I are going to talk about my pet conspiracy theory. Yep. And we'll see how that unfolds. But you guys have a good night.
Yeah.
Stay good.
Signing out.